Welcome. I am Sister Who. With me here today again, I have Chaplain Carridwen Brennan, who is a chaplain with the Correctional System here in Colorado.
That's right.
You had said that there were a number of issues within the Correctional System specifically affecting what's sometimes called the LGBT, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender population.
Yes, it is actually a fairly serious problem. One thing people need to understand is that there is no such thing as consensual sex in prison.
Okay.
Period. There is no such thing. By law, inmates are wards of the state. They are in the same classification as children from that point of view. They may not make that level of choice. They cannot give that level of consent to anyone. So whether the sexual activity takes place between two offenders, two inmates, or between an inmate and a staff person, it is illegal, and it is considered to be abusive.
Well, I would think it would also be in a similar category to a breach of professional confidentiality in the same way as a licensed psychologist having...
Well, absolutely, if staff did, and as a matter of fact, in such a case, staff can and would be brought up on sex offender charges and end up going to prison themselves. Because it's...
Even if the client consents...
There is no consent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about whether the client said yes or whether the client encouraged it. It's about professional responsibility.
So there's that whole undertone of it's illegal. And yet we have adult human beings in prison for years. So that particular problem doesn't just go away.
So essentially, recognizing that these are sexual beings, we put them in an environment in which they cannot legitimately get their needs met in any way, shape, or form.
That's right. And then
is there any solution to that?
Penalize them for it. There are states that do have solutions for that. There are states that permit conjugal visits.
Okay. But that's with spouses from outside.
Yes, that is with spouses from outside.
If it's a single individual in prison who's a sexual being,
who has formed a relationship with a spouse from the outside, some of these guys who are in conjugal visit states married someone while they were in prison. And the only time
can they form a relationship with someone else who's also incarcerated?
No.
It's just not allowed.
They can, but they will not be given conjugal visits. But that's moot in Colorado because there are no conjugal visits in Colorado.
Okay.
So that just simply doesn't exist. However, human beings need relationships. And they form them. They have to keep them just this side of sexual.
Okay.
Okay, by...
I mean, to me, a need is a need is a need. If you do not satisfy it in a positive way, it will find a negative outlet.
Absolutely, it will find a negative outlet.
But needs do not go away by their very nature.
Right. And hence, PREA, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which makes any sexual act within prison a felonious crime, and it would be prosecuted as a felonious crime. Its intent was to stop prison rape of any kind, whether it was a inmate on inmate that was forcible or staff on inmate that was forcible.
But you're taking human beings who, by nature, have a sexual aspect, and putting them in an environment where there is no way to deal with that side of themselves.
And so what do? Well, they form relationships.
But they have to be illegal relationships, which, with all the attending complications that would bring.
Absolutely. Very complicated, and yet they still happen. There's the term gay for the stay or queer while I'm here. And these are not people who would on the outside consider themselves gay. They consider themselves straight. Whether they really are, whole nother question. Not going to discuss that. But there are then people who were self-identified as gay on the outside before they came in. And they have a particularly uncomfortable life while they're in prison. Especially in the case of gay men who are fairly flamboyant.
They would wind up being abused frequently.
That's right. There is nothing worse than being a queen in prison. Well, no, there's one thing worse, and we'll get there. But other inmates go out of their way to annoy them. Staff do similar things. It's harder on the gay men. The gay women, and women in general in prison, are a little better at forming what looks, for all intents and purposes, like a family unit.
Okay.
All right? So they've got
Sounds
sisters
very
and mothers,
curious.
and even
Okay.
though sometimes they call each other husband and wife, their relationship is much more about emotional support.
Okay.
Are there sexual events? Yes. But the rape situation is more in the male facilities, and it has to be addressed because it's about, as all rape is, about power. It's not about needs of human beings to feel connected.